Now, this is the trailer for one of my favourite films of the decade of the 1980s. I saw it on the weekend of its release, opening night, screen one of the Palazzo Cinema, London. I still have my cinema ticket for it, and I went back to see it again a couple more times. Absolutely loved this movie for so many reasons, which we're going to get into tonight. Now, my co-host for tonight, considering he's someone who has famously said there were no good films in the 1980s, might seem an unusual choice, but fortunately we've been able to prove him wrong many a time and again, and I'm once again proud to be doing that again this evening with the Inside Man. How's it going?
Oh, pish! That's nonsense. Yeah, no, this is one of the, as I repeatedly say, one of the very few 80s films that are actually any good.
Yeah, it's one of the few several dozen 80s films that you've said are any good.
Yeah, well, there you go. No,
Yeah.
this really is an absolute, just a class movie. It's just
It is.
incredible.
And
film.
we're gonna talk about all the reasons why Young Sherlock Holmes is a class film. Also, of course, with myself and the Inside Man on the screen together, you can expect a deluge of inside production information about the making of the film and stuff that happened afterwards. All of that kind of interesting, juicy stuff. We're going to get into that as well. I have, of course, got the vinyl soundtrack of this movie.
But of course you do.
Of course I do. I'll be popping on camera briefly when we get to the soundtrack to discuss it. But I mean, here really is my reason for absolutely loving this film, and it's the fantastic love story that's set up with Nicholas Rowe playing Sherlock Holmes, who we're going to also talk about at great length today, and Sophie Ward, who plays his love interest, the daughter of one of his former teachers. And yeah, I mean, it's just great. Okay, so let's get into some production stuff. So the film was it was Amblin Entertainment, had not long been formed at this time, which was Steven Spielberg's production company, which I believe he formed with. Didn't he form the company with one of the other Hollywood bigwigs? I forget who. Amblin. Amblin was him.
I thought Amblin was just him, but yeah, you're probably right. I thought
Amblin Entertainment was formerly Amblin Productions, which ran from 80 to 84. Yeah. It was I think it was Jeff Small was the CEO right at the time, and Holly Barrow was president of production. But this they did a run of successful films in the 1980s, which included Gremlins, Inner Space, Batteries Not Included, which I have to say I found very disappointing when it came out at the time. I probably need to rewatch it, but at the time I was very disappointed in that film. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and of course the Back to the Future trilogy. Gremlins was the first film to use the company logo, which features the silhouette of Elliot flying his bicycle with E.T. In front of the moon. That was the company logo. And Spielberg and Don Bluth started a partnership around this time, which was to produce animated movies. American Tail and Land Before Time were two produced under that banner, which were also kind of released through Amblin Entertainment. So it's just a few little bits of background. But this was, I mean, at the time, I remember this was very much kind of sold as a Steven Spielberg movie.
Very much.
Very much. I mean, it wasn't written by him. It wasn't directed by him. It could have easily been. It was directed by Barry Levinson, who's a fantastic director, written by Chris Columbus, who's a fantastic writer. Characters based on characters by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, I believe at the time, if I remember rightly, the Arthur Conan Doyle estate were not happy with this movie. After they saw it at a test screening, there was a lot of rankled feathers, and they didn't want to change the film. They didn't want to cut out things like the hallucination sequences and stuff like that, which was a lot of the stuff that was kind of met with strong disapproval. So in order to kind of rebuff these things, they had to put a massive legal disclaimer at the beginning of the movie, basically saying, you know, this is based on in characters inspired by, but not specifically from the works of blah, blah, blah. And then they had to put an even bigger disclaimer at the end of the film, which was 2 pages of disclaimer titles.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you heard anything about that at the time, but that was a big thing.
No, I mean, if I'm honest with you, I mean, obviously, because I've seen the film, much like yourself, so many times. You know, it's it's always kind of. I just think some people can be real sort of sticks in the mud when it comes to that kind of thing. I mean, this is a movie that's loosely based on a Conan Doyle character, the most famous Conan Doyle character. However, I will just say, I mean, Chris Columbus as a writer, this is a man who absolutely knows this character. He absolutely knows his literature. He certainly knows Conan Doyle, because you have every single character trait and facet and idiosyncrasy of Sherlock Holmes that has been placed in there. So you're seeing the beginnings of these idiosyncrasies. So everything is there. But what I also find quite fascinating is that I would say, I would suggest that one of the reasons why perhaps the estate were maybe slightly displeased is because there are elements of one of Conan Doyle's books, The Sign of Four, that I think, there are some real similarities there. If anybody, if anybody out there has read Sign of Four, then they'll know exactly what we're talking about. But yeah, Chris Columbus, he knows his literature, and this is somebody who you can tell that this guy has read Conan Doyle, but he's also read Dickens, because there's some very Dickensian characters in there, some very Dickensian names like Waxflatter and Mrs. Drib and Cragwitch and what's the other one, Bobster. These are very Dickensian names, very much names that would easily fit into a Charles Dickens novel. But he's a superb writer. This, I think, is one of his. In fact, I would even go as far as to say his magnum opus, in my opinion, in terms of Chris Columbus's work as a writer. It's just incredible.
Let's talk about the plot, and I'll give a brief summation. So this is set in the youth of the youthful times of the main characters. Basically, opens with a voiceover from the wonderful Michael Hordern, who used to do a lot of exceedingly good cakes voiceovers on television. But he was a very well-known British actor. Did a lot of voiceover work for various children's TV shows, but also
wasn't it?
Paddington, but also was a renowned stage actor. Just had an incredible, gifted voice. And the film opens with him as the older Watson, looking back, talking about, it sets it up. I'm going to take you through the journey of when I first met Sherlock Holmes. His Watson school has closed down. He's used to being in a school in the country. He's a short, portly lad, played by the wonderful Alan Cox, who, of course, is the son of Brian Cox, famous actor, famous Scottish actor. And he's going to London's Brompton Academy, which is kind of like Oxford, but in London, and where he befriends Sherlock Holmes pretty much immediately. Holmes's mentors at the school include Rupert Waxflatter, who's this eccentric retired professor who has a large attic space for his inventions. He's the old science teacher. And Waxflatter's niece, Elizabeth, is set up immediately and quite convincingly as Holmes's love interest, played by the wonderful Sophie Ward. And there's a story concerning the Inside Man here, which I'm sure he won't mind if I tell, which is when the Inside Man met his wife, he said, "I love you because you look like Sophie Ward from Young Sherlock Holmes." That was it. She was nabbed. And love followed. So
there you go.
So Inside Man's wife, if you want to wondering what his partner looks like, wonder no longer. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us had a crush on Sophie Ward in this film at the time. But do you know what? It was, I have to say, it was really because I've never watched a film of this type where the love story is so convincing. So beautifully set up. The actors are very convincing with it. I mean, it's quite bizarre that, no, it's not bizarre, but it's kind of ironic. It's not bizarre at all, but it's ironic that Sophie Ward later came out as gay, and is now in a civil partnership with a woman, and you know, long may they be happy. But at the time this film came out in '85, when of course it still wasn't, you know, LGBT was not widely embraced by the that could be the kiss of death for an actor if you came out as gay in the 80s. You know, it's the same for musicians as well. Just, you know, you just didn't do it because you would kill off your fan base. I wouldn't have cared one way or the other, but I think the love interest, and we'll talk about it more in a bit, is incredibly convincing in this. So the plot goes on. Basically, the film opens with a well-to-do man having his favorite meal in a restaurant. He's about to have pheasant when the pheasant comes alive and attacks him. And this is the pre-title sequence, which is great. He runs out the restaurant, goes home, and then he sort of looks out the window, feels like he's being watched, and then things in his home start attacking him. And it turns out he's hallucinating. He jumps out the window, kills himself. And this is one of 4 men who were involved in the plundering of an Egyptian village for artifacts, where a number of Egyptian civilians were killed and murdered. And this is where your kind of sign of the 4 sort of plot comes in. Stuff that's inspired by. So the 4 men all turn out to be associates of Waxflatter's. Waxflatter himself is one of them. There's a priest who's another one, and so on. And you have various characters get killed by these. They get injected with darts. The darts are laced with poison. The poison makes them hallucinate, and the hallucinations give way to all kinds of Spielbergian special effects, including the very first fully CGI animated 3D character in the form of a knight. We'll come back and talk about the effects later. Holmes and Watson are drawn into this. They investigate. There's a subplot with a bully at the school called Dudley, who's a bit of a character, who's also fighting for Elizabeth's affections. We are going to get into some spoilers in the story. And what the film does really well is it sets up a number of things, because we know in the books Sherlock Holmes never really had a love interest, and there was all this speculation later in life about, did Conan Doyle write him as gay? And this film explains why he never marries, why he never falls in love, and you see why, because Holmes's love is in this film, and she does not make it to the final reel. And there's 2 great scenes that set up what this relationship means to him, both from Holmes's perspective and from Watson's perspective. Watson has a great line where he says, "I only ever saw Holmes cry twice in life, and at Waxflatter's funeral. This time was the first." And I remember when I was watching the movie for the first time, I thought, oh, that means that we're going to see the second time. I wonder what the second time is going to be about, because again, in the books, he never cries. He almost never shows emotion. He keeps it all bottled up. So what this film does really great is it explains why this character is like the character you know in the books later. This is who he was when he was young, and these are the things that happened to him when he was young, and this is why he became the person he did. And it also explains the coat, it explains the pipe, it explains the hat, all of which are each set up in their own organic way in this film. And you know, also some of his language, power of deduction and elementary, dear Watson, all of where all those phrases come from, all set up in this film. One of the things I really love about it. Yeah, go ahead. Just,
yeah, and also, yeah, it's, you know, you're absolutely right. I mean, those tiny little bits, like, you know, the game is afoot, and elementary, and although he never actually said elementary, my dear Watson, you know, although he did say elementary.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's. I mean, the story. The stories. I mean, it's so beautifully written, and the characters are so well rounded. But I like the opening. I think the opening is absolutely fantastic. It's a wonderful opener to this movie.
Great
You know,
opening.
we get straight into the story, and then we start finding out these different things about Watson and Holmes, and we see their relationship develop, and then we move on. Then it's kind of segmented. Their relationship is kind of segmented, if you like, by each of the intriguing deaths of the five men. So yeah, it's. I mean, this blew me away when I first saw it, and I thought this is as good an Indiana Jones movie as we will ever see.
Yes.
You know, this is like, you know, this really kind of helped me get over the disappointment of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Well, that's why this whole stream came about, because we were talking
Yeah.
about Temple of Doom on the Nielsen ratings, and we
Yeah.
both agree it's an okay film, but it's a bit poor overall for an indie film. It could have been so much better. As much as I do like many things about it, and don't get me wrong, it's still a 7 or 8 out of 10 movie. It's just not a 9 or a 10 out of 10 movie, which is what you want from an Indiana Jones film.
Absolutely.
But this is I mean, we'll do our ratings at the end, but this is first class, this film.
Really
in
is.
every respect. I mean, you could have actually taken this character, and this could have been young Indiana Jones and the Pyramid of Fear.
It could.
It could have. He could have been studying at school. He could have been studying at school in England, which would make complete sense with his character, like, you know, studying to become a teacher.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, okay, and then you would have had all the different little mini indie setups, a bit like the way you get them at the beginning of The Last Crusade. But this so could have been.
Really.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. I mean, and also, what's interesting, I think, and I think I sort of alluded to it on the previous stream with the Nielsen ratings on Tuesday, which is you know, if you look at the similarities, you know, bearing in mind that Chris Columbus directed the first 2 of the Harry Potter films, the similarities between this and the Harry Potter movies is quite interesting. Particularly the school stuff, the way everything is written at the school. So it kind of feels, it does feel very, very now. It feels very, very much a modern film. It doesn't, because it is a period piece. It doesn't date. There's nothing about this movie that dates at all. You know.
Yeah.
And I think anybody that hasn't seen it, who does happen to be a fan of the Harry Potter films, must watch this movie if you haven't seen it. If you like Harry Potter, you'll absolutely adore this film.
I mean, I would say that this film, hands down, is better than any of the Harry Potter films.
I would agree.
I would say this is a much stronger movie than Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got some amazing sets. I think again this was predominantly all shot in the UK.
Yeah,
I,
I
bel I
think it was
believe,
Norman Reynolds, was it? Norman Reynolds, I think, production designer for this.
yeah, and I think just check that actually. I think you are right because I was looking at the credits. Yes, Norman Reynolds, art directors Charles Bishop, Fred Hull, and I think wasn't it Pinewood? It was
I
shot at.
believe so. Um, although it could have been Elstree actually. It could have been
Yeah, it could
Elstree
have been.
because it was heavily used, obviously, by Spielberg, and I have a
Yeah.
feeling that it might have been part of his tradition to go back to Elstree.
Well, they
You know,
shot part of it in Oxford, the exterior school scenes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was the exterior of the school is Brasenose College, Radcliffe Square,
Oh,
opposite the
oh,
Radcliffe
very nice.
camera in the city of Oxford, with the
Yeah.
Tower of St Mary and the Virgin in the background. The school quad is that of Eton College in Eton, north of Windsor, Berkshire. So Oxford and Eton.
Right. Okay. That must have
You
been.
couldn't
Yeah.
get posher than that for a
That's where that's where
posh school.
99% of all of our prime ministers come from. Eton onto Oxford, then straight into
Yeah.
number 10.
The film shot between the 21st of January 85 and the 22nd of April 85. It was released the same year, I think in the autumn, if I remember rightly. Yeah. But I'm still trying to find. I still haven't got the studio interiors here. But I think because the main studio interior stuff would have been the sort of the nighttime streets of London, the cemetery, which I don't think was a real cemetery. The fight where that takes place with Atar and you know, the docks, that kind of dock set, which we see here. And then of course the pyramid set, which was absolutely fantastic pyramid set.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I really do. I've got a clip of that to show later. So yeah, the plot unfolds. It turns out that there's a cult operating in London, an Egyptian cult that's carrying out sacrifices and building leaders. They've got a hidden temple, and of course, this was retitled Sherlock Holmes and the Pyramid of Fear in the UK and indeed across Europe, as opposed to just Young Sherlock Holmes in America. It was rebranded with a new logo and so on. So yeah, you know, Holmes and Watson uncover the plot. Turns out one of their teachers is involved. Turns out that the school cook slash kind of medic lady who's on screen now, who was played by Susan Fleetwood, fantastic actress incidentally, who sadly passed away in 1995 of cancer. So she only had 10 years of a career after this. They're involved in the plot. Elizabeth is captured. They try to sacrifice her. They manage to get Elizabeth out. They manage to escape. But just as they're escaping, Elizabeth is shot by Atar. She takes a wound, and Holmes and Atar have a final sort of sword fighting duel. Ultimately, Atar slips and falls into the ice and drowns, or supposedly drowns. And you know, Holmes rushes to Elizabeth's side, but you can tell from Watson's face it's too late, and she dies. And that's the second time he cries. There is a fantastic setup for this at the beginning of the movie, and I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to show a scene. Now, I just want to say for the record, I own this film. I own numerous versions of this film, actually, both on DVD, VHS, and so on. I haven't done a rip of it, so I'm having to show this clip from suspicious sources. But I do want to show this clip. I want to talk about why this later becomes one of the most beautiful and sad setups and payoffs in cinema history. So let's just have a quick look at this.
I want to be a doctor.
Nobody asked you.
Sorry.
Holmes, what about you? What do you want to be when you grow up?
I never want to be alone.
All right, so going to pause that there. He says, I never want to be alone. Now, I watched this film with my first girlfriend, and I remember when that line was said, we were holding hands on the armrest, and I remember quite distinctly we squeezed each other's hands, proper held them tight. That memory is forever associated for me in that moment in that movie. And then, so Holmes is looking out the window at the woman he loves, never wants to be separated from her. And then, of course, later, she dies in his arms. And we know that the older Holmes never marries, is a loner, bachelor, all of his life. This is why. And as he's leaving at the end of the film, Watson says to him, you have your whole life ahead of you, Holmes. You've got your whole life ahead of you. And he basically says to him, yes, and I'll spend it alone, which sort of comes back round to that same scene. I'm just gonna show this again. This is the wonderful voice of Michael Hordern again. Ah, the window. Now, that is such a powerful moment, and it's such a good performance from Nicholas Rowe as well, when he looks up at that window and says, I'll spend it alone. And I mean, this is a great photo. This is a publicity still. In fact, I had a set of young Sherlock Holmes stills. I don't know if I've still got them. I might do. And their faces summarize the two characters perfectly. Him, serious, with a sadness behind his eyes. And, Watson with a sense of humor and a playfulness about him. Sorry, you couldn't hear the sound in that clip. Well, he basically looks up at the window and the guy says, you've got your whole life ahead of you. And he says, no, I'll spend it alone. So yeah, I mean, it's a killer. It's a killer scene, but so good.
What's quite interesting is that, when you think about this, obviously this was marketed towards children. So this is, in effect,
that's right.
It's a kids' movie. However, there's some very, very serious grown-up themes in this that I think that filmmakers of the day were aware that young people could actually handle. Whereas, were this made today, I think it would be very much dumbed down to suit to what they consider to be suitable for an audience. But I think this is the kind of movie that gives an audience the benefit of the doubt in terms of their intelligence. This doesn't, this has no illusions of um, sort of talking down to an audience or doing anything to confuse the audience. This is, it's a very, very well executed, well written, very carefully written story, a very
Yeah.
carefully written script that doesn't treat the audience like they're dummies. It gives the audience like I say, the benefit of the doubt. They know that they're going to be playing to people, some of whom might not entirely get it because of their age group, but for the most part, this is just a rip-roaring adventure, and very much in the style of Indiana Jones, I think.
Yeah.
It's an Indiana Jones movie for younger people, for young children, and also introducing them to a literary character that they may have heard of, but may not necessarily have had any kind of interest in prior to.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't. I used to watch some of the older, like the Hound of the Baskervilles with was
Basil
it the
Rathbone.
actor's name? Yeah, Jeremy
Yeah.
Rathbone. Yeah, and
No,
he did a great.
Basil. It was Basil Rathbone and
Basil Rathbone.
Nigel Bruce, who played Watson.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were rather good. They were of their time, and they were kind of quite funny because you had the ones prior which kind of slightly took liberties with the Conan Doyle stories, and then you had the propaganda ones from the Second World War where Holmes and Watson are basically foiling various sort of spy rings, Nazi spy rings, etc., etc. But they were okay. They were entertaining of their time, but they're entertaining. Still watch them today. But this is I think the real beginning of a proper. No, I say not the beginning, but this is an extension of proper kids adventure movies. And I've always believed that if there's one sector of the audience that deserves high quality entertainment, and it's children, it should be the best that it possibly can be. Kids aren't stupid. Kids aren't dummies.
No, indeed. I mean, let me just play this clip again. I'll see if guys, we should have the sound now.
I would have arrived at that conclusion sooner or later.
Sooner or later. Are you coming back after the holidays?
No, not so. There are too many memories here.
Holmes, you have your entire life ahead of you.
And I'll spend it alone.
Merry Christmas, Holmes.
And then he gives him the pipe.
Yeah.
And there's this great
I thought you might have more like smoking it.
great setup here for the future.
Well,
Yeah.
it does seem to suit you. But that coat, why do you insist on wearing that ridiculous cloak of that unspeakable person?
Consider it a trophy, Watson. The skin of a leopard.
Indeed.
I'm going to miss you, Watson.
I'm going to miss you too, Holmes. You know you were right about something.
About what?
It was the adventure of a lifetime.
Oh, I love this bit, man. I get goosebumps watching this,
Holmes,
Yeah.
wait. I know why the bear's white.
And why is that, Watson?
Well, the only room with an all-southern view would be on the North Pole. It's a polar bear.
Bravo, Watson. The makings of a great detective.
As I watched Holmes settle into his seat,
That's just great, isn't it? That image.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I mean,
Absolutely fantastic.
what a piece of filmmaking.
Mm.
It's just so good. I'm probably going to get all kinds of copyright alerts over these clips, but
I have a feeling that if this is available on any kind of streaming service, that that the scene where young Watson has come from the little sort of curiosity shop smoking the pipe, I have a feeling that might not necessarily be in it now. Um,
when he's trying to smoke it and he's like
yeah,
coughing and shit.
when he's smoking the
Yeah,
pipe. Yeah. I
yeah,
think that might actually be cut. So, yeah, this is one of the reasons why we must hang on to our physical media. No one can cut that
indeed.
for us.
Well, let's go through the topics as we often do. We're gonna talk about the cast first, and they spent a long time searching for young Sherlock Holmes. In fact, I believe that Alan Cox was cast first,
Yeah.
and it came down to Nicholas Rowe, who I have had dialogue with in the past about working together. This is some time ago, and another friend of mine who I had done a play with. Well, we both played the same role. We weren't on stage in the same company, but I had to go and watch him in order to understudy his part. And he was the last thing he did was actually one of the series of Sharp. And I would have thought there was a picture of him on IMDb. He's retired from acting now. He's been retired from acting. I think Sharp was the last gig he did. But he was when I met him, he was a very serious actor, very serious. And I don't know if you remember that film that came out in 1986 called Lady Jane
Boys?
Grey.
Yes.
Yeah. So Warren Sire played the king in that was being poisoned. I'm going to show you a picture of him.
Oh, right. Okay.
And you'll be able to see why. This is only a year after. You'll see why he was also up for young Sherlock Holmes.
Mm.
So it came down to him and Nicholas Rowe. And I've seen Warren in many things. I think Warren would have done a fine job. You know, we'll never can't make a true comparison without seeing him in the role, but I think Nicholas Rowe did a fantastic job. And I think I'm just going to take a look at Nicholas Rowe's credits now. I believe he had already been acting, but I think it was obviously his breakout role. And you know, for those people who think he's no longer acting, he's been a steady working actor all his life. Yeah, he'd done Another Country. So young Sherlock Holmes was his second role. He also did Sharp. And then I remember the next thing I saw him in was True Blue. I've met a number of actors who worked on True Blue, about the Oxford boat race. Good little film if you haven't seen it. And of course, I saw him in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. I saw him in Enigma. I saw him in Shackleton. I think I saw the Nicholas Nickleby 2002 production. I definitely saw Princes in the Tower. So yeah, I did see him in that. He did a number of things that I hadn't seen. And then, I mean, again, he acted on stage a lot. He's done a lot of theatre. And in fact, the time we were supposed to meet, that didn't happen because of theatre. Interesting that he also was in Mr. Holmes, and he was the matinee Sherlock Holmes in Mr. Holmes, which is quite funny. Good role in The Last Kingdom, which I've also seen. I remember him very clearly in The Crown. He was also in Eat Locals, which of course Jason Flemyng directed. Yeah. And Operation Mincemeat, I saw him in. So you know, he's got. I mean, he's got several credits in 2024. He had a recurring character in Outlaws. So he is still very much the working actor. Yeah, very much. Yeah.
What was quite interesting was I don't know whether you remember this at all. But it was the very first time that I'd heard of this. Excuse me. When this film was announced that they were going to be doing a young Sherlock Holmes movie, and I think this was back in '84, there was an announcement to say that they were having open castings for children to play
I do remember.
roles in Young Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah,
And there were
yeah,
various sort of parts of London where they could go for auditions and what have you. Um, and it was heavily advertised sort of across the newspapers, but also sort of on children's television programs. You know, we had sort
yeah,
of Saturday morning television, children's TV programs, and like Blue Peter and things like that. Um, and you had somebody on from, it must have been from Amblin, saying exactly what it was that they were looking for. But that was the very first time I'd ever seen or heard of anything like that. But now, of course, it's a very, very good, cheap, easy way to start to generate publicity. Because, of course, we had
yeah,
that for Star Wars. We also had that for Harry Potter. You know, we know that the casting process doesn't necessarily use those methods to actually find proper speaking roles. You know, we know how casting actually works. But
yeah.
for those people who don't, you know, they will go along with their kids. Take their kids along in the hope that their children are going to be chosen to play a part in some of these movies. But that was the very first one that I remember, a very first open casting that was heavily, heavily advertised, and that was for
I
this
do.
film.
Yeah, I do remember it. Anthony Higgins, who played. I mean, we're going to get into a spoiler here. This is one of the first films that has an end credits sequence that's important.
Yeah.
Right at the very end of the credits. And I remember I was working at the cinema when this film was on, and I was telling people before the movie started, I'd go down the front and do a little usher announcement and tell people you might want to stay till the end of the film. And the only other film around that time that had done a similar thing, apart from the Smokey and Bandit movies with their, their outtakes and stuff like that,
Yeah.
was Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which also
Yeah.
came out this year. And funnily enough, I saw Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Young Sherlock Holmes in the same screen at Plaza Cinema, Screen 1, a few months apart. What a great cinema that was. Loved seeing this there. But yeah, Anthony Higgins, I went to see a play at the National with a friend of mine was in it. I think it was The Mysteries, and Paul, what's his name, who played Anthony Hopkins' Batman in A Bridge Too Far. Wicks. He played Wicks.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Too
Yeah.
Far. Paul, his surname begins with B, I think. I've asked him many times to come on the channel for an interview, and sadly he just doesn't like doing interviews, so he said no, which is a real shame because he was in Zulu Dawn, he was in loads of things. But yeah, I'd gone to see a play that he was in, and sitting up above me was this guy who had this real presence, because it was that theatre where they had that slight little balcony above. It was one of the two smaller theatres in the National, and there was like just 2 rows in the balcony above you, and wearing this quite big black coat. And I looked up and I thought, fuck me, that's Anthony Higgins from Young Sherlock Holmes, and he looks exactly the same. He's got the same hair that he had in this picture, and he had this overcoat on. And when he stood up in the interval, I nearly had a heart attack. I thought, oh my god, it's Wraith. Yeah, he's got a really amazing presence. What an incredible voice as well.
I mean, what a charismatic villain.
Yeah.
This is what seems to be missing, that we have so many villains in movies and TV series that have no charisma whatever. This really is a charismatic actor playing a charismatic character. He was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. But you're right. Yeah, his voice, incredible voice.
Dan Candy has not seen this, mate. What's wrong with you?
You must see this.
Yeah, I need to rectify that. Gary Banjo Sandwich has seen it. Paul Smith also loves the Rathbone movies.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, we had Alan Cox as a very good, perfectly cast Watson.
Really, what a beautiful performance this was from such
Yeah,
a young lad. You know.
he is still acting. He hasn't acted that much. He's done a bit on stage. He's still acting now and again, but not as much. I could get into the reasons for that, but I'm not going to do that. Sophie Ward. I mean, God, man, how beautiful was she in this?
Yeah.
You know, just like, and I think that this might have been the first time I'd seen her in anything.
Yeah.
And you know, I think, like, by the way, that's the UK poster artwork, which I'm hoping they'll have the proper full quad if we're lucky. El Secret de la Pyramide. So yeah, I'll tell you what, if I have any criticism of this film, the one scene that maybe I was a bit like, really, was when they were, you know, they got this machine to fly and they flew it over London and it went past Big Ben, and that all got a bit Peter Pan for me. You know, it was a little bit, I didn't quite buy that thing could fucking fly, really. You know, but it was set up, so it kind of worked. But
it was a nice payoff via the setup, wasn't it? Yeah.
But I remember at the time. I'm probably more forgiving of it now.
Yeah, it was basically Chekhov's gun, wasn't it? Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, it was a bit. But yeah, I mean, the chemistry between the two leads. I mean, whether they had anything going on or offset, I don't really care. I mean, but it was so believable.
Really
they
believable.
Were so, yeah, they so played the part of genuine lovers, and in order to sell this movie, that was absolutely crucial. You had to believe it, and it was so important for you to believe it because you needed, for this film to work, you needed to feel Holmes's loss at the end of the movie. You had to feel it as well. You absolutely had to feel it. Oh boy, did I feel it. I can't watch this film now without welling up. I will well up at the I Never Want to Be Alone, because when I was married, my ex-wife had not seen this film. And I remember we sat down and we watched it, and I'd forgotten about that scene and what it meant to me when I saw it with my very first girlfriend. And then suddenly I remembered it was coming up, and I was like, oh my God, there's this scene coming up and I might cry, I said to her. And I said, but the reasons that I might cry are good, and before they were not. And she was like, what do you mean? And I had to, fuck it, I've got to pause the film. So I ended up pausing the movie. It's so weird how films can have these kind of bolts in your life, which is really what my book was about. And I explained the story. I said to her, well, you know, I was with my very first partner when I saw this film. You know, we kind of squeezed each other's hands on that line, like, you know, it meant something. Then, of course, you know, young love, it never lasts. Your first girlfriend at school, whatever. And I said, and whenever I've watched this film since, I've always, when that scene's come up, I've always thought, I can't wait to watch this and know that I'm no longer alone. And I said, when this scene comes up in a minute, you'll understand exactly what I mean. Scene came up. She went, oh God, that's so sweet. We had this big kiss. And then the next time I watched the film, which would have been, well, I mean, I watched it in preparation for this, but the next time before that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I whacked it on one night. And again, I'd forgotten about all these things. And then now that scene is now associated with that memory.
Yeah.
Except now I'm alone and she's no longer here. I mean, she's no longer part of my life. I can't tell you how much that fucking kicks me in the ghoulies when I watch that scene. And my line is still the same. I don't want to be alone. You know, I fucking hate being alone. That's why I don't go to the cinema, because I don't go on my own anymore. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I completely understand that. Totally understand. But it is a beautiful line, isn't it? I mean, it's such a simple but genius line to put in there, which
yeah,
really gives you, again, there's a setup and payoff, but it's not just a setup and payoff for this movie. It's a setup and payoff for the character's entire life throughout the books, the Conan Doyle books that we know and love.
yeah. By the way, just so you know, Nicholas Rowe, who plays young Sherlock Holmes, has got the link to this stream, so he might be
Oh, nice.
he might be watching it right now. It's entirely possible, or he may well watch it later. So if you are listening, Nicholas, you did a fucking first-class job in this part. I have to say, couldn't imagine anyone else playing the role. So the other thing that's great about it, we're still sticking with the cast. The other thing that's great about the film is it's populated by these older British character actors, and oh man, that photo, this picture. Sorry to go back to this again. When she does that, and then he looks up at the window later, and she's not there. I mean, fuck, just kills me. Anyway, so we talked about. So you got Freddie Jones, who,
great
of course,
actor.
Yeah, not long before this had done Chester Cragwitch. Roger Ashton Griffiths as Lestrade had he's recently been in Game of Thrones. Some people may remember. El Rhodes, who played Dudley, is an interesting one because he retired from acting and became a cameraman not that long after this.
Oh,
but he was great in this.
he was brilliant.
And I remember when I saw him, I wrongly thought that this was the actor who played the role of Doyle in Grange Hill, who was kind of a similar sort of bad guy in the first couple. It was like Tucker Jenkins. Yeah, Tucker Jenkins, bad guy character. Holmes, you're responsible for this. Oh, is that where my experiment went? In your tea. Yeah. He's got his little gang of henchmen.
Yeah. He was I mean, he's definitely a kind of a proto what's his name? Draco Malfoy. Isn't he? Definitely a proto Draco Malfoy, really, with his little henchmen as well. Crabbe and Goyle. But he's brilliant in this. I mean, he really is brilliant. I mean, he plays smarmy very, very well.
Yeah. No, indeed. I thought there would be a picture of him somewhere, but there's just loads of stunning pictures of Elizabeth. Heartbreak. Oh my God, this is just killing me. Her death scene, man. Just one of the best, if best is the right word, one of the saddest death scenes, ever in a movie. Now, Nigel Stock, who played Wax Flatter, almost completely concealed in his costume. He was also, I'm pretty sure he was also in the Seawolves. He died only a year after this.
No, really?
86, yeah. He was in The Great Escape, of course. He was Cavendish, wasn't he? He was Cavendish.
Yeah, he was Cavendish, yeah.
I'm sure he was. Let me have a look at his credits. Oh, maybe not the Seawolves. I'm thinking of him from The Great Escape.
Yeah.
Cavendish, where he gets in the truck, but he gets betrayed.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very much a jobbing British character actor.
Yes, he was.
He played Winston Churchill in A Man Called Intrepid, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. He'd done TV shows like Triangle, Fall of Eagles. He was Cromwell. Sorry, he was in the movie Cromwell. He wasn't Cromwell. He played Sir Edward Hyde. That's a good film. He was in The Lion in Winter, which is also a good film.
What a great film. Great movie.
I don't know if you ever saw The Lost Continent, which is a real oddity of the Hammer House of Horror. It's when they kind of did, look at this miniature work in the trailer, they did this sort of Lost Atlantis type movie. And I saw it as a kid, and of course it's got a bit of action, it's got monsters in it, it's got miniatures, and I really loved it. And I remember finding it. It took ages for me to find it, and I got my ex-partner, my casting director Sharon, to watch it, and we sat down and watched it. And I said, look, it's going to be a bit cheesy, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. And it took forever to get anywhere. Had all these really loads of padding with really boring scenes of people staring out of windows, smoking pipes and talking nonsense.
Yeah.
And like Sharon turns to me and goes, "It's a bit slow, Lancey." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't remember these bits. I remember all the good shit with the monsters." And I, in the end, I just said, "Okay, let's skip to the last 20 minutes."
Yeah.
And that's what we did. But Nigel Stock was, he was in that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why he so this was, this would have been one of his last movies. He had a heart attack. Okay, well, that will do it. Married 3 times, probably also reason enough to have a heart condition if you've married 3 times. His third wife, Rishenda Carey, they appeared on stage in the world premiere of Mumbo Jumbo, 1986. Less than a month later, he died of a heart attack, survived by his 4 children. So Rishenda Carey is not a name I'm familiar with. Just curious to see. Oh, that's her. Okay, I know who she is. Yeah, very well-known character actress. She's been in loads of stuff. Always plays like stroppy teachers and creepy old ladies and this sort of thing. Yeah. She's still going. God, she'd be a great person to interview.
God, yeah.
Yeah, so rest in peace, Nigel. Who else do we have? Patrick Newell, pretty well-known British character actor who played Bentley Bobster. And then Nadeem Swahala was in it as well, playing he played the guy in the tavern with the blunderbuss. He's still going.
Yeah.
And he was in, wasn't he in The Spy Who Loved Me? Did he play didn't he play one of the guys that got bitten by Jaws? Am I getting him mixed up? Let's have I'm pretty sure wasn't it him? Yeah, it was Fakesh. He played. First of all, you have to meet a man. You have to meet a man called Fakesh, and that's right.
Yeah,
he's the one that runs into the pyramids and gets bitten by Jaws. Yeah, Spy Love Me. Yeah, Are you sure
he's still with us? I don't think he is he?
According to IMDb.
Oh yes.
Unless they're not up to date. Yeah, I mean he's born in 1933, so he's getting into the 90s now, isn't he?
It's 92.
Yeah. His last credit, Tel Aviv on Fire, 2018, playing the role of Bassam. Yeah, so there you go. House of Saddam, I saw him in that, where he played King Hussein of Jordan. Yeah, that was a good little mini-series, House of Saddam.
Yeah.
Good. So you got him in there. I think we've probably covered the main ones. Let's just see if there's anyone else we want to give a mention to. I mentioned Susan Fleetwood, who played Mrs. Dribb, who sadly passed away quite young.
She was terrific.
She was fantastic in this. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Great actress who had quite the formidable career. I mean, she'd done a lot of stuff on stage. Very charismatic. She played Athena in Clash of the Titans just a few years before this. Did things like Cadfael the Bill, the usual rites of passage for any British actor. I dare say there's probably episodes of Casualty on here somewhere. Bergerac, some plays for today, that kind of stuff. I know she did a lot of stage work as well. And her husband was a stage director. I think he went maybe like 5-6 years later, something like that. First class cast. Do you want to say anything else about the cast before we move on to production team and special effects and that kind of stuff?
I've got to say the two leads, Nicholas Rowe and Alan Cox, I think are incredible. I think
They
they're
are.
absolutely incredible. What an amazing relationship. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I should imagine that they had a fantastic relationship while they were making this movie.
It's
They
it does
really, really,
it seems like they have good chemistry, doesn't it? I'm not
it
picking up.
really does. It
Yeah,
really
I
does.
hate
I
you
mean,
vibes.
they are they are definitely really genuinely bouncing off of each other here. Um, but I just love the way they speak. I love their delivery of dialogue, but their voices are unbelievably good and unbelievably suited to the parts that they play. They're very clipped English RP kind of British accent. It's really beautifully delivered. This lovely dialogue, um,
Mm,
just terrific. Two of my favourite male leads. I have to be honest with you.
yeah, I would agree. They are perfectly cast.
Hmm.
Um, I like the way I noticed this when I was watching this today, that this logo was clearly designed so that at some stage, if this went on to be a massive franchise, they could have just removed the young
Yeah,
and kept the rest of the logo and the font the same. See what they did with that?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of clever. All right, so we're going to move on. Let's talk about the special effects and in particular this shot, because for those people that don't know, this was the first CGI fully CGI animated character
Yeah.
in
And
cinema history.
but my God, looking at this, right? I mean, 1985, right? This is
Yeah, yeah,
1985, right?
yeah.
As you said, the first fully rendered
Three
CG character,
dimensional. Yeah, three
three-dimensional CG
dimensional
character.
CG. Yeah,
Just incredible. I mean, this looks as good now as it ever will look.
yeah. I mean,
It's an incredible piece of work.
I watched this sequence again today, and I was kind of sort of looking for things like black lines, stuff like that, and there was nothing. And I remember thinking, oh, these effects. I mean, it's not my favorite effects shot in the movie. I'll get into that in a second, but it's certainly up there. And it's just a great sequence. Now, I do have one gripe about this sequence, and they did what all men do of that age when they've got a great toy. They got so excited about it that this was the clip that was shown on TV repeatedly before the film came out. Look at this great effect, it's in this film, and it totally ruined it. I would have much preferred not to have known this effect within the movie, gone and seen the film and had this surprise me. And I mean, fortunately they didn't show any of the other effects sequences. I think a couple of them showed the clips of the chase through the cemetery, which we'll come on to next. But
this is what happens when you allow UIP to do your publicity.
Well, indeed, yeah. UIP, yeah. United International Pictures, right?
Pictures, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I remember UIP owned the Empire Leicester Square and they owned the Plaza, and all of those tickets used to have the UIP logo on them. All their cinema tickets.
Yeah.
So they knew they were going to get to show their films in London in 2 premium cinemas. It's such a shame the Plaza's gone, because that was a beautiful 4-screen, but the main screen was huge, just off of Piccadilly Circus. Great location, nice foyer. Very much missed. I saw Das Boot there on re-release. I saw The Italian Job there on re-release.
Nice.
I can't remember what the last film was that I saw in the Plaza. I do remember the last film I saw at the Empire before it was rebranded, and it was like Narc or something. It's like a really low rent drama, which was a shame. But yeah, these effects were created by Lucasfilm, Industrial Light and Magic, John Lasseter basically doing the leads, and the CG character scanned and painted directly onto a film using an RGB laser. So there you go, for those nerds who like that sort of stuff. But yeah, extremely well done. There was a great scene where when the characters hallucinate, there's the disclaimer at the end of the movie. There's a great scene where Watson hallucinates and sees these cakes, man, that scene is so fun.
It's brilliant.
Because everybody kind of sees their fears, and Watson's fears are basically about getting fat. So he's running through the cemetery, and this crypt opens up, and inside the crypt it's a fridge full of all these lovely cakes, and there's a string of sausages and stuff, and he goes to pick up one of the pastries, and these two little eyes open on the pastry, and it's got little hands, and then basically all the food starts attacking him and trying to basically jump into his mouth and force feed him. Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Really great effects. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you can't deny that ILM absolutely outdid themselves with this film. I mean,
Yeah,
as
they
you
did.
say, the additional effects. I mean, even if you take just one of these effects on their own, right? So one of these effects sequences on their own, of which there are quite a few. Whether it's the cakes, whether it's the night, the stained glass window. It doesn't matter which one you choose. I mean, they're outstanding. They're really. This is when you know now that ILM are absolutely at the top of their game at this point. But that effect, I agree with you completely. The way that it was continuously shown and shown and shown again.
Yeah, kind of killed it, didn't it?
It's luckily I actually got to see the movie before I'm one of these people that I ignore as many trailers as I possibly can and any information about anything that I possibly can. I've done it for decades and decades, and this was one of them. And I didn't want to see anything. I just heard that it was going to be a Spielberg movie. That's all I knew. Being a little bit of a Sherlock Holmes fan, I thought, yeah, this is really going to appeal to me. But I was lucky to have avoided that. But that is an incredible sequence. Incredible.
Shall we have a quick look at the killer cakes?
Yes, let's.
So we should. So again, just for the benefit of people watching, I own various physical media copies of this film, and this is purely for the stream. So a quick look at this clip. This is brilliant.
Brilliant.
There's all these like treats coming towards him. I better stop that there. Yeah, and it's funny when go on.
Sorry, mate. Go on, please go ahead.
I was going to say, when you rewatch it, because it's quite fleeting in the cinema, but when you get to rewatch it on digital, if you got the Blu-ray and stuff like I have, and you pause those scenes, you can see all the different types of animated creatures, and there's everything from like a lemon slice to a bonbon to a donut, chocolate eclairs. They're all there, which is just brilliant. So much stuff going on.
I think what I liked about the Watson character, just kind of going back to Watson, is they kind of created him or reimagined him, if you like, as a kind of a Billy Bunter character, didn't they? And if any of the American audiences watching, for those Americans that aren't familiar with Billy Bunter, he was rather rotund, portly schoolboy character created in like classic English children's literature. So
he's also a well-known rave DJ, but that's you know, that's unrelated.
Yeah.
But I'll get images up of yeah, I mean, who we're talking about. Yeah, he kind of ate lots of cakes and
Yes.
shit
Yeah.
like that, didn't he? And
Yeah. He is. I mean, and he does. You know, not being cruel, but he does kind of resemble Billy Bunter. He does actually resemble Billy Bunter when you know, when you look at poor old Watson there.
yeah, I mean,
So
there's a few images of Bunter here.
yeah, but I think
yeah.
I think this was kind of perhaps a deliberate choice in the writing as well, because as I said with Chris Columbus, you know, a man who really does know his literature. He really does, and you can tell. And I
Yeah.
think he's obviously very aware of Billy Bunter and had written the character as Billy Bunter stroke, you know, John Watson. Um, I mean, I can't say enough about Chris Columbus, but in terms of the effects, yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, it was. I mean, there's an awful lot of serious stuff involved in this. I mean, some great matte paintings and some miniatures in there as well.
Yeah.
I think that might be. I think the matte paintings might be Harrison Ellenshaw. I'm not entirely certain about that. But there's a couple of really good matte painting shots there.
Incidentally, I'm just going to give a shout out to my friend. I don't know if she's watching. She might be watching. Liz Dempsey, who's posted on my Facebook. This is one of my favorite films ever. A sequel would have been amazing. I've got something to say about a sequel. Maybe we'll save that for the end. Matthew Holmes has popped in to say hi.
Hey, Matt.
Currently heading 2.5 hours north into the middle of nowhere. Put us on as your voice background, mate. with our stream.
I hope you're doing well, Matt. I hope you're doing well, mate.
Yeah, so Matthew is currently filming the Sundowner. I think it's his 5th independent feature film. He's shooting it with a budget of under 50 grand. I mean, it's his wife's doing the catering. His wife is, by the way, is a fantastic chef. So you know, they're actually quite lucky, the cast and crew, that his wife is doing the catering, because they're
well, she's Italian, so you know, what more can you ask for? Yeah,
they're all gonna look like Billy Bunter at the end of the shoot, basically.
Yeah.
No, I think the Australian heat of the outback will probably sufficiently keep them lean.
That will sweat a few pounds off.
It certainly will sweat a few pounds off. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, going back to the visual effects, here's some of your cakelings. It's fantastic. You've got the sequence with the poultry coming to life at the beginning as well, very effective. And later, of course, we have other scenes with things coming to life and stuff, and I think that gave the film it gave it a bit of a
fantasy
horror.
Fantasy horror.
I was trying to look for the right genre. Fantasy horror element, which maybe ruffled a few Conan Doyle feathers, but I have to say, I think it works. It works in the film. You wouldn't have wanted to put it in, you know, every sequel going forwards, but it worked. It worked perfectly for this movie, and you know, gave it a sense of the unexpected. Let's also talk about the production design and art direction and costumes, because I mean, this pyramid. I've got a board game. It's actually on the shelf behind me, called Treasure of the Pharaohs. In fact, if I put my camera on for a second, and I'll make myself large. Maybe actually I was going to come on camera to talk about the soundtrack. So here is the soundtrack for the movie. This is the UK logo that went on the UK posters. and that is the UK cinema poster on the back, and you had this logo was kind of at the side here, because our cinema posters are landscape as opposed to the American portrait. I love this soundtrack album, but there's actually a double CD that you can get now that's got the entire score for the movie.
It is. I mean, I think. I mean, if we're going to go through the soundtrack prior to the production design, are we going to do that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, let's talk about the soundtrack now, which is Bruce Broughton. Do you know what? I haven't taken this record out of this sleeve. I mean, if I went back in time to the last time I took this out of this sleeve, I would probably be in the 80s.
Yeah.
Maybe 1992, something like that. You know, and it's not warped. Let's look at that.
Fantastic.
But
this, I mean, Bruce Broughton. Just for the record, if anyone's interested in Bruce Broughton, right? He is. I mean, this is probably the best John Williams soundtrack that John Williams did not score. It's pure John Williams. It's as good as anything that John Williams has composed. It has an incredible theme, fantastic leitmotif running through, but each of the tracks are superb. And as you mentioned, I think this was recorded at Abbey Road, and I think it was the LSO, London Symphony Orchestra, that recorded this at Abbey Road.
I don't know. I wonder if that's on the sleeve notes. Yeah, carry on anyway while I'm reading them.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, you're right. Recorded and mixed by Eric Tomlinson at Abbey Road Studios. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, he is a master composer, and I think he's one of the most criminally underused, undervalued, underappreciated composers in all of film history. He is absolutely superb. I mean, he has done some amazing scores. I think Silverado was one of his. The Boy Who Could Fly. Many others, but I think he isn't used enough. He's underutilized. I mean, his talents and his gift is underutilized. But this is one of my, if not, definitely in my top 3 of all time soundtracks.
That'd be a good movie to do a chew the fat on, by the way, is The Boy Who Could Fly. I really like that film. It's underrated, that film. What do you got in your water pistol? Water? No, piss. Brilliant line. He is not as he's not as famous as he should be. He should be up there with the James Horners.
Yeah.
Very much a classical soundtrack guy. Doesn't lean into the whole doesn't lean into the whole Hans Zimmer sound design.
No.
You know, organic combination. I have written to him. I've had a reply from him, and I may well go in for the kill and ask for an interview.
That would be amazing.
Soon, but he bought a copy of my book because he's mentioned in it.
Oh.
So in terms of composer, just looking at his credits, interesting that he did one episode of the Orville, Texas Rising, which I have the DVD box set of. Good score, disappointing series, I have to say, especially considering the great cast that they had. I don't know what happened with that show. The script just wasn't there. But I'm just looking through. So he did the Lost in Space 1998 music. Do you know what I like the music?
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I like the way it combined Miracle on 34th Street. He did the soundtrack to Tombstone. Now that's a great score.
Yes,
that opening. Dun 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 dun. Just love that opening. Narrow Margin. It's got a good score. That piano, that sort of old school piano thriller vibe he went for. Great film. I think that film is also mentioned in my book. I think Narrow Margin's in there. Yeah, The Boy Who Could Fly has got an amazing score. Sweet Liberty. I remember the theme tune to that. The theme tune to Sweet Liberty goes da 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 da, and it's all this kind of like upbeat, and it opens with the film unit all moving along the road, all being filmed.
Yeah,
and they filmed their own film unit for that.
Right, yeah. I mean, that was
Liberty is Michael Caine, Bob Hoskins, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Alan Alda. That's a really underrated film.
I haven't seen that in years.
Do you know what? That's a great film. That'd be another good one to do a thing. He did the Ice Pirates. He did the Ice Pirates.
Yeah.
Just looking at some. So he did the music for Buck Rogers in the 25th Century.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Chips. I don't. Just one episode, so probably not the main theme.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Silvestri has also done Chips as well, believe it or not.
Right, I can believe it. Yeah, so Bruce Broughton, great score for this. Also, you know, it's a score worth picking up if you're a collector of soundtracks. Matthew Holmes is in the chat. Look at this. Two-Tone Pictures. Hey team, thanks for the shout out. I'm jumping onto an interview in a few minutes for Fear Below, so I can't jump on. That's okay, mate. I think Matthew is a fan though of young Sherlock Holmes, because I seem to recall me and him talked about it once before. We've got Richard Hawkins in the chat. The Orville was a great show. It's still going, I think, isn't it? Are they going to do one more season? Orville's the best Star Trek show we never got, for sure. So before we move on, let's mention the production design and the costume design people, because we were saying that aspect of the film in particular is really good. You were saying it was Kennedy. Was it Nigel Kennedy who was?
Production designer was Norman Reynolds. Obviously,
Norman Reynolds.
Norman Reynolds. This is Norman Reynolds' Star Wars: Raiders of the Lost Ark. Norman Reynolds. Yeah.
So yeah, for those people that aren't familiar with Norman Reynolds' credits, well, I mean, you know, as a production designer, he might have only had 14 credits, okay, but oh my god, what 14 credits to have. Let's have a quick look at those.
I think Alien 3 was one of them as well. I think
Alien 3 was one, and Alien 3 did have a good set. I'll give it that. I'm not one of these people that thinks Alien 3 is brilliant. I think it's still pretty poor. So he did Empire Strikes Back, which he would have worked, of course, with Alan Tompkins as art director. He did Raiders of the Lost Ark, Return of the Jedi, Return to Oz. You know, you got to have one. Young Sherlock Holmes. Empire of the Sun had amazing production design.
Yeah, wonderful.
Mountains of the Moon is an underrated movie.
God,
you know what?
I haven't seen that for years.
Quite like that film.
Is that the one about? That's the one about Richard Burton, isn't it? The explorer, Richard Burton. Yeah.
Trying to find the source of the
Nile. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
He did a great job on Alive. I think I've seen Clean Slate, but I can't quite remember it. Mission Impossible, good job on the first film. Sphere was a bit of a disappointing movie, but then I read the book, and the book weren't great either, by Centennial Man. Now, do you know what? I don't think I've ever watched that movie all the way through.
Oh, is it so good?
Yeah, I know. I've heard good things. It's interesting because that was his final credit, which was in '99. But he lived to the ripe old age of 89. So I wonder, you know, kind of what did he do? Did he just retire?
I think he just
probably
retired. Bless him.
Bought a pretty nice house.
Or designed a pretty nice house. Well, it's funny because the staircase, the metal staircase that was in from the Alien 3 set that they had built, he actually had that removed from the set and took that home and installed it into his own house.
That's
So,
amazing.
So it was. It must have been quite a house that he had.
One of his daughters became a makeup artist, worked on Batman, Willow, Legend, few things, but not so active lately. So, yeah, but he would have been a great guy to interview.
Fantastic. I mean,
he was around until fairly recently, which is a shame.
Yeah, a lovely man, and
I have a feeling. I have a feeling. Looking at this picture, I think I met him at Alan Tompkins' memorial service. I think he was there. Pretty sure he was there. And I'm pretty sure I talked. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was there, and I'm pretty sure I talked to him. Because that really rings bells. Well, small world. Although the Lancy world, as we know, is quite big. So, who was the costume designer? Because the costumes in this are pretty good. They're all period, of course.
Yeah.
You've got the the temple, the cult guys with their costumes, which are pretty cool. Got a great still of that. The costume designer on the show was Raymond Hughes. Sadly no longer with us, passed in 2015. Now, as costume designer, he had no less than 38 credits, and some pretty good ones too. Let's have a quick look at those. He also worked with our production designer a couple of times. They both worked on Return to Oz, but he also did Space Precinct, The Musketeer, which I saw that 2001 version. I saw that in the cinema. That's the one that's got all the kind of chop socky stuff on ladders and things.
Yeah.
The miniseries of Jack the Ripper, that's probably the one with Lewis Collins and Michael Caine. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great, that is.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's my favorite version of the Jack the Ripper story. I think it's really, really good.
Yeah.
And has Armand Asante in it, who looks very similar to Anthony Higgins, who's in Young Sherlock Holmes. So, yeah, he'd also done The Far Pavilions, which is a show I've considered rewatching recently. And then a lot of kind of stuff like Play for Today, Doctor Who. Looks like back in the Pertwee era, because 1977. Yeah, The Palaces. I mean, we're going back a ways. Yeah. And he did Jewel of the Nile as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, there we go. But yeah, costumes on the show are pretty first class. Has to be
really
said.
Good.
Yeah, so here we are. And this whole temple scene, which is very reminiscent of the Indiana Jones sort of that sequence in Indiana Jones. Very reminiscent.
Very much.
But I think it's better.
I agree.
I do think it's better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's considerably better. I think it's much better shot. It's certainly better written. It's better executed. It's far superior than the sequence in Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom.
Now, pop quiz for you, Inside Man. Walter Sparrow, as seen in this shot, was also in another big hit movie that he made in the early 90s, which would have been one of his last films. Do you know which film I'm talking about?
I do not.
We are talking about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He's like Duncan, Master Robin. Yeah, that is definitely the same actor. Yeah, Walter Sparrow. And if I click on his credits, he passed away in the year 2000. There you go, Duncan, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I knew without even checking. And he did. He had 107 acting credits.
He's not related to Walter Pigeon by any chance, is he?
Very funny. I think not. There he is in the Storyteller. No, but he's
or George Seagull.
No, he's a good friend of Donald Duck's though. So.
Or Donald Pheasants.
So moving on from the bird jokes, which I feel the mileage has been used. Yeah, that's the scene where Nicholas Rowe inherits the hat from Wax Flatter. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. So I guess we've probably covered all the sort of production areas. Trivia. So we'll get to do some trivia before we sort of begin to wrap up and give our final scores. There's a couple of things that are kind of interesting about the film. I mean, one of them is at the time of its release, because it had a pretty high budget, was kind of around I think around $18 million, something like that. So, you know, in 1985, that was anything coming up to 20 mil was
healthy.
The equivalent of your 100 million budget today. So, you know, it's pretty high budget. And it did break even. I think in the United States, it just broke even, but only just. It sort of raked in ultimately about 19 million, 19.7 against an 18 million budget. 46th spot at the box office. Internationally, it performed better. So yeah, it was a much bigger hit in Europe, getting an extra 44 million. So total gross worldwide was 63.7 million. So unfortunately, they set everything up for this to have a sequel. Everything. They even have the line at the end where Michael Hordern goes in voiceover, "Had a feeling that my adventures with Holmes were just beginning," something like that.
Yeah.
And then you had the post-credit sequence, one of the first films to do a proper post-credit sequence. In fact, I think this was the film, because you can't call the go home, the film's finished at the end of Ferris Bueller. That's just a gag.
Yeah.
This had a proper post-credit sequence that had a clue that meant something, and it sets up the coming of Moriarty for the next movie, or indeed the franchise going forward. And I remember sitting with my first girlfriend watching the film, and the whole end sequence has got this whole thing with this sleigh, you know, this kind of bobsleigh thing going along in the snow, and you're like, this is unusual. Why is the end credits got this seemingly disconnected sequence with this sleigh? What's going on here? And I saw everybody else getting up to leave, and I just turned to her and I said, let's stay till the end of the film. I often kind of like to do that anyway, because I like to hear the score. Yeah. So we sat and we stayed there, and you know, and then when there's this reveal at the end, you know, Moriarty is coming, the bad guys survived. Spoiler alert. Sorry about that for those people who haven't seen it. It's you know, it was a really big thing, and I remember going, ooh, and we heard a couple of other people in the cinema go, ooh, and we sort of turned around. There's only like 6 of us left out of this audience of about 400 there were in there. Yeah, so that was interesting.
The thing is, I mean, if we look at the box office, it's a fairly decent box office. I mean, over 3 times its budget. That's not bad.
That's worldwide, though. They always hoped to get that at home, didn't they? Domestic. They always want 3 times domestic if they can get it.
But this, you know, so effectively, you know, this obviously didn't perform as well as they had expected. But there's nothing wrong with this movie. There is literally nothing wrong with this movie. It deserves far more praise than it perhaps gets. And the only people that don't praise it are the people that haven't seen it, because they think it's kind of like, you know, a cheesy 80s. They would call it an Indiana Jones ripoff, which it isn't. It's but nonetheless, I think where the problem really lies is its publicity. I think the publicity, the trailer was decidedly amateur. I think it was a terrible trailer.
Yeah, the trailer that I showed at the beginning, I think, is the American trailer, and the British trailer was not the same as that. I remember the British trailer was way better. But I remember seeing somewhere there is a modern trailer for Young Sherlock Holmes on YouTube somewhere. It might have been taken down now because I couldn't find it. But someone made a really good one, and it was like, God, yeah, if they'd had that trailer back in the day, it would have been huge, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah,
It's a
hey
shame.
ho. But
It's a
it was
shame.
a shame
It is a
because
shame.
it definitely, you know, we could have had three great movies here,
Mm.
and they would have been great. They would have been good. And you know, and I mean, it's great that Nicholas Rowe has managed to make a career out of acting, because he earned it from this movie alone. He earned his place in the hierarchy of actors, and I think, you know, in the 90s, I think he was struggling a bit to find work, and the roles he was getting offered were not that great. They were sort of fairly small, and it was a lot of posh blokes. But as time's gone on, I think he's sort of learned to accept that, okay, I'm predominantly going to get offered posh roles, but let's see if I can pick some really good ones, because he has done some great parts. He's done some great stuff on stage. Yeah, actually, James Evans, I really like Time After Time. That is a great film with Malcolm McDowell, the Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Yeah, that's a massively underrated film, actually.
Yeah,
really
the
like
H.G. Wells thing, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I haven't
Well,
seen that in years. God, I'm gonna have to get that, I think.
yeah. It's a good film. I actually rewatched it not that long ago. Yeah, that was another one I tracked down. So, if there had been a sequel, I mean, it might not have had the emotional power that this film had, because the love story would have been missing, and Holmes would have had to have been a much more colder, emotionally remote character. However, you could have done something with Watson having a love interest, and I think they probably would have gone that direction. You could have also had a love interest that Holmes rebuffs. And then, of course, you know, if the sequel had been made now, Holmes would have been gay. Would, no doubt they would have taken it that direction. But you know what? I would actually quite like to see a sequel to this film made now with Nicholas Rowe in the lead.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Oh, it would be fantastic. I mean, you could still get Alan for Watson as well, because he's still around.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it would be great. I would love to see that. They could even have Sophie Ward appear in her, because she's still a beautiful woman. They could even have her appear in some kind of dream sequence.
Yeah.
And you could do a sequel to this, and it could be Holmes in retirement doing his last case. So he links up with Watson for the last time. And you know what you would have to do. You would have to kill him. He would have to die at the end. He would die defeating Moriarty. And in the books, they die together. They fall off a waterfall together. And Conan Doyle killed his most popular character. And I believe, someone in chat can correct me, but I believe he was forced to bring him back because it was such an unpopular decision with his readers that he killed off Sherlock Holmes.
It was exactly that. It was exactly that. And because, yeah, I think I mentioned this previously when we were talking about Bond. You know, the Bond character basically being killed off in effectively at the end of You Only Live Twice, and then brought back for The Man with the Golden Gun. It was a very similar story. So, so he has the final battle with Moriarty at the Reichenbach Falls, and they both fall to their death. So, and of course, it was so the fans of the Sherlock Holmes books, and particularly the ones that were serialized in the Strand magazine at the time, were so incensed and infuriated by Conan Doyle killing off their favorite character, effectively that was the end of it. That really was going to be the end of it. And he had so much hate mail. So, trolling and hate mail isn't a new thing, just for people out
Yeah,
there if they're wondering. And he actually had death threats.
yeah,
So he had no choice but to bring back the character. And of course, he brought back the character as, in the New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, and it
yeah.
was kind of entitled, as a collection, the New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. But the reason he faked his death was so that he would lull all of the criminal fraternity into a false sense of security in order for him
Right.
to return. So yeah,
That was the story.
yeah,
So I think you could do a great sequel to this with the two actors, and then you would end it with Holmes would die, killing Moriarty. I think Anthony Higgins is even still around, so you could literally have all of the cast come back,
yeah,
and then you would have Holmes, like, I mean, you'd have to be careful how you filmed it so it wasn't cheesy, but it would be such a great scene if, like, he's walking into this light and Elizabeth's waiting there, which would be your Sophie Ward, older now, of course. And the first thing he could say to her is, "You've aged," and she would say, "So have you, but that's because you're late, as always."
Mm.
And he would say, "Yeah, but I'm here now." And she'd say something like, "Yeah, and this time I'm never going to let you go again." And then they would turn and they would walk into the light, and that'd be the end. Yeah, I know I'm a big softie. Absolutely, 100%. I am a big softie. But that would be so beautiful, man, because it would be such a good arc from the first movie. Because he says there'll be a time when we'll be together in a better world. And that's them going into the afterlife, the better world. Oh, would be good. Would be good. As long as that scene is prefaced with an amazing film, I think people would buy it. I think people would buy that ending. As long as it's got an amazing movie before it with a lot of tension and action and a great plot, and I think they would buy it. So
see, I think that that Nicholas Rowe would have. No, I'm not taking anything away from Benedict Cumberbatch at all, right? But I think he would have made a better TV Sherlock Holmes, a better TV Sherlock. I really do.
Nicholas Rowe, you're talking about.
Nicholas Rowe would have made a far better TV Sherlock Holmes than Benedict Cumberbatch.
Cabbage Patch.
Yeah.
Cumberblock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what, that Cumberbunch Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes TV show, I never got into it. I know I just never really got into it.
I'll level with you. I saw one and I switched off. That was it.
Yeah,
for a
I mean,
couple of
I
reasons.
saw one episode. I didn't even watch a whole kind of thing. Yeah. Go on. The reason.
I actually thought that the essence of Holmes was completely lost. I know a lot of people have said, "Oh, this is Sherlock Holmes really kind of boiled down, really kind of pared down and whittled down to the bare bones of what Sherlock Holmes is. This is the essence of Sherlock Holmes." And I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was anything like Sherlock Holmes at all, and not because it was set in a contemporary London. I just didn't think that it was written properly as Sherlock Holmes. I like Mark Gatiss as a writer. I think he's a fantastic writer. I'm maybe not necessarily so enamored with Stephen Moffat. but he can write. There's no question of that. Otherwise, he wouldn't be as successful as he is. But I think they kind of missed the mark a little bit on writing this series. I really do. But I think there's always room for new Sherlock Holmes anyway. I mean, whether it's canon or whether it's something like young Sherlock Holmes, or even Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes movies, I think there's always room for Sherlock Holmes.
In Japan, there was a computer game released in 1987 called Young Sherlock: The Legacy of Doyle, which is an unusual title.
Oh.
This is it. It's the best image I can find, which is very tiny. But apparently the plot has very little. The plot of the game has very little to do with the movie. So hey, there you go. But okay. So we're gonna sort of wrap up. Marks out of 10 on this one. Well, before we do marks out of 10, do you have any criticisms about the film? Is there anything in the film that you think could have been done better?
No, this film gave me everything I could possibly want from a good rip-roaring, fun adventure movie. This gave me everything. Okay. As much as Raiders of the Lost Ark gave me everything, this gave me everything as well. Okay.
No, fair comment. Well, I have to say I agree. So hands down, it's a 10 out of 10 from me.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I mean, this is one of my. I mean, I do have an awful lot of 10s, but this is really. I mean, it's an exemplary movie. It really is something quite special.
I can't remember if I put this movie in my book, Silver Screen Journeys. I'm just gonna turn to the 1985 section because I so should have done, because it's got such a full circle story in terms of like that memory with my first partner and then the memory connecting to it with my last partner. But I don't think I included it. I don't think I did, because I've got Silverado. Then I've got Spies Like Us, The Jewel of the Nile, White Nights. Those were 3 date movies that all sort of came. Then Aliens, and I think Aliens was 86, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Aliens was 86. Yeah, I did not include this film. I so should have included this in my book. I don't know why I didn't. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Explorers. I guess I just.
You have to do a revised edition.
Well, do you know what? There's about 5 movies since I wrote this book that I've remembered really significant stories about.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. There's another 4. I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty big book already. It's doing quite. I've had like 10 reviews now, and it's still trending at, I think 4.5 or 4 stars out of 5.
That's pretty good.
4.5 stars out of 5. So, Elementary, my dear Lancey, Elementary. Keith says 9.5. In the last 2 years, I'd give it this mark. Yeah, I mean, when it first came out, I will admit I found the whole flying contraption sequence a bit like, come on. But now, watch it, I can sort of just watch it and go, that's fine. It's a fun part of the movie.
Yeah.
And it kind of works. So okay, so guys, we have a very important announcement for the 13 people watching. Stay tuned for this one. So tomorrow I've got a very special guest coming on at a much earlier time than now, because that's the time they're available, and of course I will work around my guests' availability, because that's how it works. So I've got an industry interview tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I'm having to do the same thing I did when Gail Ann Hurd came on. I'm having to talk to my guest through Zoom and then restream that through YouTube. But we have it all set up with the assistance of my Tombi app 9000. So tomorrow, coming in at 5 o'clock, is character actor Jim Piddock. So you guys will have seen him in all kinds of things, not least of which is Best in Show, one of my favorite comedies of all time. But he's also been in things like Modern Family, Blacklist, The Prestige. He's got a great book out called Caught with My Pants Down and Other Tales from a Life in Hollywood. And he's like, there's been this British character actor that's sort of, made a living in the US. The book's got, it's Foreplay by Eric Idle, which I think is quite fun. I've got a copy of the book on its way to me, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to arrive in time for the interview. I was hoping to hold it up on screen. Now, you guys may also remember that in the film Independence Day, which is one of my favorite cheesy days, there's this wonderful scene where they kind of cut to the desert where all the forces of the world, the air forces of the world are like hiding out, and there's suddenly this scene with with these British pilots, and one of those pilots is played by Jim. That scene is on YouTube. Let's have a quick look at it. I'm going to show this scene again tomorrow. Maybe I can do it without getting copyrighted, but anyway. So yeah, look out for Jim in this sequence. Tell me if the sound is working, please.
Has attempted to compile a list of casual losses, but information is sketchy at best.
Well, we know we've lost the Belgian contingent in Sinai. There's a strong possibility there may be more reinforcement hiding in the Golan Straits.
What the hell's he saying? It seems they're getting a signal. Old Morse code. It's from the Americans. They want to organize a counter-offensive.
It's about bloody time. What do they plan to do?
Do you know what? I love that scene because it's like it's all the forces of the Middle East that are tearing each other apart right now.
Yeah.
But basically what they say is, look, if there was an alien invasion and the aliens were going around and they were exterminating humanity, do you not think these people would put their differences aside and all suddenly be fighting on the same? I actually believe that would happen. I know it seems absolutely improbable, especially with the way the world is right now. Yeah. But if you look at history, like, when the Nazis attacked absolutely everybody, America and Russia never would have been allies under any other situation, but boom, they were, and America was sending huge material over to Russia. Yeah. So you might think that's a nuts scene, but it would definitely happen. Good night, Richard. Thanks for tuning in. Do try and catch the interview with Jim tomorrow. Of course, it will, like everything else, it will stay up on the channel. So Jim, who was the British guy on the right in that scene, and the other British actor, I only remember seeing him in Jilly Cooper's Riders, if you remember that adaptation on TV.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name, but that actor was in that. So he was obviously also in America trying to do the thing and get some British parts. I wonder what happened to him. Maybe Jim will be able to tell us that tomorrow. We will see. So we got that coming up at 5 o'clock, and then in the evening we are doing the Nielsen ratings, where we're going to be talking in great detail about a new 4-part drama series that's dropped on the Disney Channel of all places. And people watching, if you haven't seen it, absolutely get hold of this and watch it, because it's a first-class it's a first-class drama, 4 parts, and that is Suspect, the shooting of Jean-Charles Jimenez, and it's a really, really well-made drama. I was not sure about 10 minutes into episode 1. I was thinking, oh, I don't know about this, but then actually, once it got going, and once I saw the quality of the supporting cast, Emily Mortimer is particularly good as the very emotionally removed from reality Cressida Dick. So it's a first class cast. You've got 4 episodes. The first episode really covers the 7/7 bombings and what happens. The second episode covers the shooting of Jean-Charles. The third episode is basically the cover up, and the fourth episode is the campaign for justice and the public inquiry. And it's a really good show. This is the guy, by the way, that he got mistaken for. He got mistaken for this guy, and they tried to say he looked similar. And these 2 actors are 100% spot on representative of the real guys. 100%. Couldn't get better likenesses. I mean, just not in a million years do these 2 people look remotely the same. They're not even racially the same. It's just it's such a bad fuck up. Yeah. And I mean, good cast, some really good performances, some from not especially well-known actors. The actors who play the bombers, who play the conspirators, do a great job. They're very, very convincing. And of course, this is our man. This is our chief of whisperers from Game of Thrones. So with hair, Connolith Hill. So this guy on the left looks like he's been doing some serious drugs. What's going on with his eyes? Look at this guy on the left here. Looks like scary. Yeah, it is a really good show. Max Beasley's in it as well. He's very good. I think that's James, what's his name, Joyce, who was in This City Is Ours. The Liverpool thing. We were talking about what a great actor he is. Yeah, he's got a part in this as one of the armed police. But it's some of the bullshit that went on, some of the dirty tricks campaign that was like employed to try and tarnish the reputation of the guy who was murdered. Absolutely disgraceful. This woman got paid to come forward to say that she was raped by him, which was complete nonsense, absolute fiction. Just to kind of give him a sort of black mark his name and stuff. Terrible stuff.
Just to have the public turn against the character and say, oh well, then maybe it wasn't a bad thing after all.
I mean, we'll get into this tomorrow because we're going to give it probably a good hour of our time. It will be the main thing we'll be discussing tomorrow. I have given all of the panelists strict instructions to have watched it, so hopefully we'll get the full Monty in terms of feedback. But yeah, I mean, it's a good show. If you haven't watched it, you should. Have some tissues. It's a little bit, and we'll get into it tomorrow. But so thanks very much for everyone who's tuned in. We had quite a nice little healthy audience while we were live, and we've been going up against Drunk 3PO and some pretty big. Just seen he's live streaming, one of my favorite YouTubers, actually, funnily enough. And some other people over. There's quite a few channels doing live streams right now. So we do appreciate you tuning in with us and giving us your time.
Thank you.
And I think we're going to do. There'll be no Chew the Fat next weekend because I'm going away. And we'll be without the Nielsen ratings for 1 week. But once I come back, we'll be doing our Sunday streams again. So the question is, Inside Man, what do we do as we're coming into the summer? Do we do the next season of The Shield? Do we do the next season of Spartacus? because those are two things that we've said we will do this year. Or do we do something new? And I think there was a couple of other things we've discussed. Do you remind me?
Pacific was one of them, wasn't it?
The Pacific was definitely another one.
Did we ever happen to mention that we were going to do Rome? I think we said we were going to do Rome at one point.
We talked about it. I mean, I'm sort of like, I don't know if I want to do Rome and Spartacus, because they're both kind of sword and sandals TV shows, and I feel like now we've committed to Spartacus. Yeah, probably just want to kind of see that through. Yeah, we might do like a one-off on Rome, like we've done tonight, just like one discussion about it. I don't want to do it episode by episode.
No, I think a great co-host to have with us would definitely be History Bro.
He would be great.
He would be wonderful, and I think also, because he has that intense knowledge, that real kind of deep knowledge on the Roman Empire in particular, he'd be great. But I think perhaps if we were to do Spartacus as our next series, that would be great. Because what I've been doing is I've been holding back seeing season 2 and season 3 of Spartacus, even though season 2 is a prequel, I believe. So you've got the well, technically the prequel series is technically not season 2. It's just it's a spin-off, isn't it? It's right. It's a standalone spin-off or something. But apparently we've got trouble with our connection. I wonder if we're still live. Let me see. That's what it says. I just tried to type thank you into the chat, but it didn't come up. That's odd. I'm going to go onto the channel. No, we are still live. Yeah. Let me just I'm just gonna. Jamie G said great stream. Oh, bless you.
So I just wanted to type thank you there. Having an issue with that on streaming. No, that's working fine. Okay, so apparently earlier though, we were getting some cutouts every few seconds. We were getting I think probably due to us showing some clips and shit. So I dare say as soon as I come off here, I'm going to get some copyright strikes. So I'm going to have to go in and probably cut out some of the clips we showed, which is a shame because they're quite relevant. But okay, all right. Well, we're going to wrap it up there, guys. So we've got 2 streams tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, with the excellent interview with Jim. So do come and watch that. And then we'll be doing the Nielsen ratings at 10 o'clock, which should be a pretty interesting one. So, until then, do hit the like and subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to keep an eye on the people you care about. Tell them that you love them. And we'll see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Misfits and dreamers getting innovative. It's film, TV, and theater in the mix. Industry interviews where ideas get their fix. He's creative, we're creative. How about you? Share your passion, join the crew. At Outcast legend, Gale and her